No matter how easy some of the best actors make it seem, acting is hard. Whether it's being convincing in a realistic narrative, or matching the unorthodox tone of a Wilder project, the best performances tend to be those that take a lot of time and preparation, professional or non, to flesh out. While the quality of a film performance, like any aspect of the filmmaking process, is subjective, varying between different viewers and across generations, what generally constitutes a high-quality acting job has, over the years, been narrowed down to a variety of factors, sometimes even contradicting one another. Intensity and subtlety, consistency and range, credibility and suspension of disbelief. It's challenging enough to find an actor who embodies one or two of these ideals in their performance style, let alone finding one who embodies them all. Tough as it may seem, there are those shining few actors out there who can approach any challenge set before them and knock it out of the park, and today we're going to highlight the absolute best of them. So who is this one actor who towers above all others, making their incredibly intimidating body of work look like a stroll through Mr. Rogers' neighborhood? There are honestly a handful of actors I could be discussing here, from Brando to Blanchett, from Streep to Fonda, from De Niro to Day-Lewis, but they've all gotten their flowers many times over. To me, there's one performer who stands toe-to-toe with the best of them and has yet to receive their full share of deserved praise. And that actor is...
Tilda Swinton.
That's right, baby. Today we're taking a peek into the incredibly complex oeuvre of my main lady Tilda Swinton, the queen of genre prestige herself. Now, whenever Tilda Swinton's name is brought up, any film fan will be quick to sing her praises. The problem is, her name isn't brought up all that much, at least not nearly as often as Meryl Streep or Cate Blanchett or Viola Davis. And unlike some other underappreciated actors, Swinton doesn't have the language barrier preventing her from receiving her just due on North American soil. People watch her movies. In fact, while these may not be the best examples of her proficiency as an actress, there are some movies in her catalog that literally everyone has seen. There's no shortage of fantastic Swinton performances out there, and even the less accessible ones are within grasp of the more vocal film advocates on the internet. So today I want to discuss what specifically makes Tilda Swinton the most interesting and talented actor working today.
Tell me your name. Catherine Matilda Swinton.
One aspect that gives Tilda Swinton a clear edge in her acting capabilities is her range as a performer. Like I've said, she's been in everything from intimate indies to soulless Disney products, and in every instance, she brings forth each ounce of passion and nuance that her material would allow. Part of what makes her such a versatile performer is her image. Swinton is primarily known for being an androgynous figure in pop culture, bending common perceptions of gender identity and being fluid and daring not only in her public image, but also in her choice of roles. One of the most common jokes lovingly directed at Swinton is that if ever some studio were dumb enough to attempt a David Bowie biopic, nobody would be more suited to the role than her. It doesn't matter that actor and subject aren't the same gender, because Swinton and Bowie both embodied a sort of casual disregard for conventions of gender and an enigmatic physicality that just made them seem perfectly compatible. Saying Swinton would be a good Bowie has never once been meant as an insult to either of them. It's a compliment of the highest order. For a more concrete example of Swinton's gender-bending capabilities on screen, one need look no further than what may be her breakthrough role in Sally Potter's Orlando. Orlando adapts the Virginia Woolf story of an Elizabethan nobleman who makes his way naively through the years without ever aging and, at one point, even switching sexes without explanation.
Same person. No difference at all. Just a different sex.
Now, obviously, a film like this needs an actor who can convincingly play two different genders. And while nobody going into Orlando knowing who Tilda Swinton is would be so completely immersed as to completely divorce themselves from the reality of the gender-bending element here, she does bring a needed sincerity to the role, and slight shifts in her physicality throughout the film, while subtle, do add up to a believable progression for this character. Another aspect of Swinton's range is her emotional versatility, always hitting the right energy levels needed for a role. For a brief case study, let's examine 4 of Tilda's films. The second Chronicles of Narnia film, Prince Caspian, Julia, Burn After Reading, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. With the Narnia film being a blockbuster fantasy, with Swinton reprising her role from the first film as the villainous White Witch, it calls upon a certain icy poise that requires both Victorian bitchiness and commitment to the more childlike elements of the film. She never chews the scenery, but she commands every second of her small screen time, which calls back to her more extended work in the first film that gave her far more opportunity to steal the spotlight. Instead, she played her pivotal supporting role with every ounce of commitment she could muster. Julia is an internationally co-produced crime drama film from director Eric Zonka. This performance, in a European art house film, calls for Swinton to be far more unlikable than a character literally called the White Witch. Here, Zonka calls on her to be far more erratic, outwardly self-centered, and catty the entire time. This is a character study wrapped in a crime thriller, and what makes it so compelling is Swinton's ability to lock you into a person whose problems you otherwise wouldn't give a shit about. Next up is Burn After Reading. This is a Coen Brothers movie, which should probably tell you all you need to know, really. It's a smaller role for Tilda, but a meaty one that's made to get a lot of laughs. And it does, thanks to the Coen Brothers' ability to play on her signature poise for jokes and match her up amazingly with John Malkovich and George Clooney. Then there's Benjamin Button, the longest and least David Fincher movie. Here, again, Swinton has a small role. And it's also the most normal of the bunch, playing an unhappy wife of a British tradesman who has an affair with Brad Pitt's titular wanderer. Again, this is a very small role, clocking in at less than 10 minutes of screen time. But the impact of her character on Benjamin Button is fairly important. As the first physical love of his life, there's something alluring in Elizabeth's quiet demeanor towards her companion that makes his longing reminiscence for this period in his life all the more understandable. None of that would come across without Swinton's perfect capturing of a woman who both commands attention and finds herself wordlessly drawn to someone else. At this point, you may be asking, why did I choose these 4 films specifically to highlight Swinton's talents? It's a pretty eclectic collection, and as far as screen time is concerned, there are far more substantial films I could have picked to highlight Tilda Swinton's talents. But aside from being great demonstrators of her range as a performer, there's a greater point here, which is that all of these movies came out in the same year. In 2008, Tilda Swinton managed to show more range in her choice of roles and her execution of them than most actors get a chance to do over the course of their entire careers. The diversity of her performances is largely matched by the diversity of her directors, which leads me to my next point.
What makes me cry? Oh, pretty much anything by Hayao Miyazaki.
Maybe the most interesting aspect of Tilda Swinton's career is her continued willingness to challenge herself by working with acclaimed directors from all over the world, each with their own unique styles. 2008 alone saw her work with both the Coen brothers and David Fincher, but her American art house fancies have extended to directors like Wes Anderson, Spike Jonze, Mike Mills, Tony Gilroy in her one and only Oscar-nominated and winning performance, and even a vocal cameo for the Safdie brothers in Uncut Gems.
This appraisal's a fucking joke!
Oscar happens to be one of our most experienced gemologists.
Who clearly knows nothing about colored stones.
Jim Jarmusch is probably Swinton's most fruitful American collaborator, always finding a kooky supporting turn for the actress or, at best, a leading role as a vampire suffering from ennui. Naturally, Swinton's collaborators extend far beyond the States, and this is where the stylistic flexing comes to the forefront. Her several collaborations with Luca Guadagnino are probably most famous. It's heavily rumored that, for I Am Love, Swinton learned both Italian and Russian so that she could speak Italian with a Russian accent.
Grazie.
Her perfect synchronicity with Luca's airy, lovelorn style has paid off in both his romances and his horror films. Longing is an expression Swinton has equally brought to life, most recently in George Miller's 3,000 Years of, longing. This returns her to the fantastical elements she's explored in the past, this time with a far more grounded approach to complement the expressionism of the material. Hell, she's even done a short film with Pedro Almodovar because, at this point, why the hell not? To that end, Swinton has actually found herself as the transitioning point for several foreign directors making their first leaps outside their home languages. Recently, Swinton helped Thai filmmaker Apichatpong, I want to get this right. Apichatpong Weerasethakul. Anyway, she was in Memoria, Apichatpong's first foray into not even Spanish language cinema, because of course Tilda had to just challenge herself to learn another new language. Hungarian nihilist Béla Tarr decided to make a French language film, so obviously Tilda had to show up out of nowhere. I mean, hey, it was shot in Hungarian and dubbed horribly, but, Tilda was doing her part to carry the ship at least. At this point, Tilda Swinton has become such a ubiquitous part of world cinema that I half expect her to show up at the premiere of Christian Mungiu's next— of course she did. Of course she did, why wouldn't she? One filmmaker who did manage the successful jump to English language cinema with Tilda's help is everyone's favorite South Korean, Bong Joon-ho, who found the perfect vehicle for Swinton's more cartoonish sensibilities in Snowpiercer.
No, we don't need all that. I've only got 7 minutes.
Swinton returned for Pong's follow-up, Okja, which showed off yet another one of the actress's favorite challenges, playing multiple roles at once. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Tilda Swinton's work with women directors, because they may be the ones who've gotten the best work out of her. Sally Potter, of course, did wonders with her in Orlando, while Joanna Hogg has found an appropriate muse for recounting her own personal vignettes in the past 3 years. But maybe Swinton's best role to date came from her work with Lynn Ramsey in the deeply human and rigidly uncomfortable We Need to Talk About Kevin. Here, Swinton's entire range of self-destruction, internalized shock, and fragility reach the forefront in a show-stopping turn that, like the film it's in, commands your attention while simultaneously just begging you to look away from the horror. It's not all dour arthouse films, however, that populate Swinton's filmography, which leads to one last point.
I love not knowing what I'm doing next and like having a dog in this shot.
One final aspect of Swinton's persona paints a complete picture of the actor that may not conform entirely to the image mostly presented in this video. Her sense of humor. For someone so eclectic in their choice of film roles and collaborators, it would be really easy to see Tilda Swinton as this reclusive Daniel Day-Lewis type who takes her craft incredibly seriously and goes into hiding for years between roles. But no, she has a willingness to step into goofy comedy, and she's always willing to clown herself and the people around her. Just look at her collaborations with the Coen brothers or with Wes Anderson, and you'll see a highbrow actress gladly bringing her prestige to some pretty wacky material. Why is she in Trainwreck? Who cares? She probably just showed up to set one day and Judd Apatow decided to throw her in because who wouldn't? And while I've yet to see Trainwreck, because Apatow and Amy Schumer is probably a recipe for my preemptive suicide note, I'm sure Tilda ran away with it. More than her willingness to have some fun though, Tilda Swinton's career is marked by a gentle commitment to the deeply human elements of even her most outlandish characters. Her work with directors like Joanna Hogg or Tony Gilroy isn't led by some desire to show off her wild choices, but rather by a desire to find the pathos and richness within each role, be it in a subtle dual performance of a mother and daughter, or the frantic advisor of a sleazy conglomerate. Her desire to be challenged is one thing, but that desire is never overcome by one for success and attention, and the end result is a career that most actors, even the very best, wouldn't be able to achieve for themselves in double the time. Tilda Swinton is, bar none, the unsung master of modern day performance, and it's about time she gets her due. As always, thank you all for watching this video. I know I've been on a pretty long hiatus since the last one, which has done far better than I could have imagined, so thank you all so much for that as well, but I hope to come through with some more interesting content in the coming months. So stay tuned for that, stay safe, and as always, I'll see you when I see ya.